I'm Rendan. This is my hair drying in real time, and this is my review for Zack Snyder's hashtag release the Snyder cut of Justice League.
For dark time.
I've never seen a being this strong. Maybe one.
Zack Snyder's Justice League is finally here. It has dropped on HBO Max, and I watched it. All 4 hours of it. This is literally longer than 2 of the Lord of the Rings theatrical cuts. And yet, here it is, a superhero movie. And what I can say about it is, even though I didn't have a whole lot of interest in it and questioned its existence in a video that I made a few months back when it was first announced, I think, personally, if you have the product and then you say, I want it to be this way, and I will not rest, I will harass and go insane on people until they make the product the way I want it. That's a little bit much. So, we'll see. We'll see if this develops into something the studios will be pursuing in the future. Because it could be actually mildly profitable for a studio to do something like this. This is one that I went into with some level of interest because I watched the 2017 Justice League and very much disliked it. I think it's one of the worst superhero movies of the past few years, past decade probably, and it's undoubtedly the worst DC movie. So I think anything would have been a step up, and what I can say is that this is a definite and significant step up from the original 2017 Joss Whedon Justice League, but it isn't a significant enough step up to make it particularly good. Now again, Justice League from 2017 is so terrible that almost anything is better than it. Even a pitifully mediocre movie like this one.
I made a promise to him on his grave. I need to bring us together.
For a 4-hour movie, you'd think I have a lot to talk about, but I don't. This movie is actually painfully dry at times, and there just isn't that much of interest here. I'll probably be comparing it to the 2017 Justice League a lot because that's all I can really do. But before we get into that too much, let's talk about some things I liked, some improvements to this film over the 2017. One is that it's a very clear, cohesive whole. This movie actually operates like one person's vision, which was pretty nice, to be honest. The original Justice League was so obvious in its switches between its directors and its vision. It was so obviously cut down because of its stupid 2-hour mandate that it negatively affected the movie in almost every conceivable way. But this is definitely Zack Snyder's movie, and from the first scene, it's pretty clear that it is his movie.
There are enemies coming from far away.
Another thing I liked was the visuals. I think this movie actually looks very nice, and I don't mean the visual effects because a lot of those are kind of weak, but visually, the cinematography, the look of the movie, I actually liked as well. The dark presentation that Zack Snyder's known for, I'm always kind of okay with. A lot of people dislike it, but I'm fine with it. And there's some actually pretty nice cinematography in this. There's one shot where Ben Affleck, as aka Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, is walking towards the edge of a cliff and looks down on a city or a town, and the camera is tracking him from behind and it cranes up to show the city and him on the sledge. It looks great. And the 4x3 presentation is incredibly pretentious and completely unnecessary. It even feels like the movie was not meant to be in 4x3. There's a lot of shots with headspace, like a lot of headspace, implying that they were gonna letterbox it. But hey, you know what? 4x3 I think always looks pretty good, even if it's starting to become a staple for pretentious movies. It still looks fine. And one thing I really enjoyed about this was some of the fleshing out of the side characters that we didn't get in the last Justice League. Characters like Cyborg that I liked from the Justice League have backstory, have motivation that actually is interesting here. He isn't just a dude who became a cyborg because his dad did a thing. Now there's motivation to him, there's motivation to his father, they have kind of a conflict, and the son resents him for making him into a cyborg and letting his mom die, at least in his eyes. So there is actually kind of development of the characters that's interesting. So I like that. Also, there's a lot of little subplots that are given more room to breathe, which I think works in much better ways than in the 2017 version. The Amazons have way more screen time in this, and you actually kind of get a feel for them and what they're trying to accomplish. J.K. Simmons has a little bit larger role, a few more scenes here and there. Alfred has a much larger role, a lot more scenes. Superman is back. They did other reshoots so that they could fix his upper lip. That's not an issue anymore. There's a lot of improvements, is what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of things that they saw from the 2017 Justice League and said, we're going to make that specifically better. We're going to take Cyborg, whose character was a complete flatline, but mildly interesting, to me at least, in 2017, and develop it, flesh it out. Make his character have consequence, motives, morals, have his father be a central part of the movie, have his father actually help them in different ways. We're going to make that interesting. We're going to take Henry Cavill's horrible CG lip and reshoot scenes when he doesn't have a mustache so it looks actually good.
No protectors here. No lanterns. No Kryptonium. It will fall in his name.
Aside from that, this movie has a lot of issues. And again, the 4-hour runtime is the best and worst part of it. It simply doesn't need to be 4 hours. There's a insane amount of filler in this movie, like to a ludicrous degree. I mean, one of the opening scenes in the movie is Ben Affleck walking through this frozen tundra to Aquaman's little weird village in the Antarctic or wherever, and there's like 10 shots in a row of the camera sweeping over these icy landscapes, and Bruce Wayne isn't even in the shots. Like, just cut those all out. You don't need them. It just pads the runtime. But not only that, are there just a bunch of random shots of nothing, there's also a intense and overbearing amount of speed ramping and slow motion that, again, just pads the runtime. The scene with Ezra Miller where he's saving this girl from a car accident goes on for like 15 minutes because it's all done in hyper slow motion. You watch a sesame seed fly off a hamburger bun for literally 10 seconds of this movie. If you said that this movie wasn't self-indulgent, you'd be a liar. And that's another big negative for it. This movie is incredibly self-indulgent. Not only is it very, very long and unreasonably long, I think. You could trim out a solid hour of this and it would still be as good as it is. But it's also very pretentious, as I've mentioned. The 4:3 aspect ratio does this no favors. The constant, overbearing slow motion implying greater grandeur to these images of Aquaman walking up to the sea. Unnecessary. And the music. Wow, is it overbearing and obnoxious at times. Aquaman walks into the sea over a heavy rock song.
I have turned worlds to dust. All of existence shall be mine.
Oh, and another thing I just remembered that adds to the pretentious factor of this, it's segmented in parts for absolutely no reason. There's 6 parts to this? Why? Why did you make this movie have different parts? It's not as if one part is very different than another, it is just a continuation of the last part. So why even break this up into parts? Especially if it's not going to do what Netflix did with The Hateful Eight, where it's episodes, like it's actual parts, where you can watch in parts. This is still a 4-hour movie, but it has parts in it for no reason. And the dialogue, I haven't mentioned, is pretty bad. Pretty inconsistent, very lofty, very Zack Snyder. Most of the criticisms of Zack Snyder movies are applicable here. Like, his structures are not good. He structured, like, the first act of this in reverse for no reason. I mean, it's a 4-hour movie, so the first act is like 90, 80 minutes. And he decided to structure the break into 2 as the opening of the movie. So you get acquainted with the villain before you get to know the characters, the heroes. It's incredibly bizarre. You know the villain and his plan and what he's doing before you develop Cyborg or the Flash.
He said the age of heroes would never come again.
Fighting the devil and his army.
Like, you could point to some things that aren't polished, like some bad visual effects. There's one scene where Wonder Woman's throwing guys around in like this bank or something. I don't even know where they are, museum. And they're like these horrible rag dolls that look like PS3 games. And she jumps out of the building and throws this bomb up. It looks pretty bad, but it's not a blockbuster that's hitting theaters, that's had years of work behind it, like the original Justice League, where that is completely unacceptable. This, I can overlook that a little bit more because it is a movie that shouldn't even really exist. But other than some, you know, polish issues and the unnecessary 4-hour runtime, there just isn't that much to talk about, other than the alterations and differences between the 2017 version and this version. This version just feels like it gets it up to water. Like, if the Justice League was a sunken ship at the bottom of the ocean, unrecoverable, then this is sailing. But it's not flying, you know, it's not going to the stratosphere, it's not hitting the moon, but it's sailing, you know, it's watchable. So if you like Batman vs. Superman, if you like Man of Steel, which I don't particularly, I think Batman vs. Superman is a pretty middling movie, as is this, but I hate Man of Steel. But if you like either of those, you will probably like this. In fact, fans of the Zack Snyder version that even tweeted one time, release the Snyder Cut, you cannot dislike this. You made this happen. You don't have the option of disliking it. I'll give it a 5. 5 out of 10. There are parts of it where I wanted to give it a 6. There's parts when Cyborg was getting developed where I was like, okay, I'm actually kind of being won over by this. But there are parts where I was like, why? And I just wanted to beat my head against a wall because it was so dumb.